You feel it before you see it. A prickle on the back of your neck. A pull in your gut that says, turn around. You haven't heard anything. You haven't smelled anything. But something in you already knows. For most of human history, that feeling kept you alive. For nearly 6 million years, your ancestors were not the most dangerous thing in the landscape. They were food. Leopards dragged hominins into trees. Hyenas competed with them for carcasses and sometimes for their lives. Eagles took children. This isn't speculation. In 1995, paleoanthropologists Lee Berger and Ron Clark examined the skull of the Taung Child, a roughly 3-year-old hominin who died nearly 2 million years ago, and found puncture marks that matched the talons of a large eagle. For a long time, people assumed your ancestors were natural-born killers. The evidence said something more humbling. They were prey. Think about how strange that is. You are reading this in a safe room, with no leopard within 1,000 miles, and still, some old circuit in you is listening. So, what happens, biologically and psychologically, in the moment a predator decides whether to strike? And why does looking away matter so much? Start with the eyes. Across the animal kingdom, being watched changes behavior, and not just the watchers. Researchers studying European starlings found that the birds could tell the difference between a predator looking directly at them and a predator looking away, and they adjusted their vigilance accordingly. When a hawk-like predator faced toward them, the starling stayed alert. When its gaze shifted away, they relaxed and went back to feeding sooner. The direction of a predator's eyes is information. It tells prey whether they've been detected. Now, flip the relationship. What if the prey controls that information instead? This is where it gets strange. In 2020, a team of researchers led by Cameron Radford and Neil Jordan, working with the Botswana Predator Conservation Trust, ran a field experiment on a cattle herd living alongside lions and leopards in the Okavango Delta. They painted large, eye-like patterns on the rumps of some cows, plain crosses on others. Nothing at all on a third group. Over 4 years, the cattle with painted eyes on their backsides were significantly more likely to survive an ambush than the unmarked cattle. The cross-marked cows did better too, just not as well, which told the researchers something important. It wasn't only about looking like an eye. It was about looking watched, looking like a target that had already noticed the world around it. Lions and leopards are stalk and ambush predators. Their entire strategy depends on getting close before being noticed. They creep through grass, use cover, time their approach to wind and shadow. An eye staring back at them, even a fake one painted on a cow's backside, signals the one thing an ambush predator cannot use: detection. The hunt only works as a secret. The moment it isn't a secret anymore, the math changes. A 400-pound cat does not want to spend the energy of a failed charge, or risk a hoof to the skull from an animal that's braced and ready, instead of grazing with its head down. Surprise is the entire weapon. Take away the surprise, and most of the time, the cat simply walks away and waits for an easier opportunity. This is the part that should make you sit up. Predators are not reading your soul when they look at your eyes. They're reading probability. Can I get close without being seen? Has my approach already failed? An animal that's been spotted has to decide, in a fraction of a second, whether a chase is still worth the calories and the risk of injury. Most of the time, for an ambush hunter, the answer is no. Spotted prey runs. Running prey can fight back, scatter the group, or lead the predator into worse terrain. So, if you've ever heard the advice to make eye contact with a dangerous animal instead of running, this is the actual mechanism behind it. You are not staring it down. You are telling it that the element it needs most is already gone. So picture your ancestors 300,000 years ago, walking the edge of a tree line at dusk on the African savanna. The light is dropping fast now, the way it does near the equator, gold turning gray in minutes rather than the slow fade you might be used to. This is exactly when big cats hunt, in that gold-gray hour when shapes blur and shadows lengthen and a crouching animal looks almost exactly like a tuft of dry grass. The group is tired. Children are being carried. Someone is thinking about water, about the camp still an hour away, about their aching feet. Then someone stops walking, not because they heard a sound, Because the hair on their arms just rose, and 400,000 years of ancestors who survived that exact feeling are quietly voting in their nervous system. Stop. Look. Do not look away first. Heart rate climbs before the conscious mind has even named a threat. Pupils widen slightly, pulling in more light from the dimming scene. The group, almost without speaking, clusters tighter, the way it has clustered for a million years, because a scattered group is a buffet, and a tight group is a wall of eyes pointed in every direction. Someone scans the grass. A shape that might be a rock, a shape that might be a crouching leopard. They hold the gaze on it for 3 full seconds, the way you might hold a stare at a dog you don't trust, refusing to be the one who blinks first. If it's a predator that has not yet committed to the attack, this is often the moment it breaks off. Not because it's intimidated in any human sense. Because the ambush is ruined, and ruined ambushes are not worth finishing. The cat melts back into the grass, repositions, waits for a target that isn't looking back. Anthropologist Polly Weissner, who spent decades studying hunter-gatherer life and storytelling among the Jew, Hoanzi San of the Kalahari, documented something that fits perfectly here. Around the evening fire, after the sun goes down and the predators most likely to be hunting are out, the kind of talk people did changed completely. Daytime conversation was full of complaints, gossip, practical disputes over who took too much meat or who hadn't pulled their weight on the last gathering trip. But once the fire was lit, that talk shifted towards stories about distant relatives, cosmology, the wider world, and, notably, animals in danger, the kind of stories that taught children what a hyena's silhouette looks like against moonlight, or how to read the tension in a herd of antelope upwind. Weissner argued these stories did more than entertain. They transmitted exactly the kind of vigilance knowledge that kept people alive, passed down in the one part of the day when everyone was sitting still, together, facing outward toward the dark. The fire itself wasn't just warmth and a backdrop for stories, it was light that predators avoid, a visual boundary that says this space is watched, this space is occupied, do not approach unseen. A circle of firelight is, in effect, a circle of permanent eye contact aimed at the darkness. Humans didn't just defend themselves with spears or numbers. They defended themselves with visibility itself, built a tool whose entire job was to make the unseen scenario, the one predators depend on, impossible. Here is the counterintuitive twist. You'd assume the scariest predators in your ancestors' world were the ones that attacked head-on. The chargers, the roarers. They weren't. The deadliest predators in human evolutionary history were the patient ones. The ones built entirely around not being detected until it was far too late. Remember the Taung Child, the skull Berger and Clark studied with the eagle talon marks. That kill worked precisely because a child looking at the sky doesn't expect death to come from directly above, silent, fast, and gone, before a single warning cry could be raised. There was no stalking through grass to detect, no silhouette to catch out of the corner of an eye. The entire predation event was built around the one blind spot nobody thinks to defend. Leopards drag prey into trees specifically to avoid losing the kill to other predators on the ground, which tells you how seriously the threat of being seen and challenged factored into their entire strategy, even after a successful hunt. And the fossil record from African archaeological sites shows, through tooth marks left on hominin and animal bones alike, that hyenas often won contests over carcasses, not through brute force in the open, but by displacing groups from caves and kill sites when they weren't watching closely enough, slipping in during the gaps in attention rather than fighting for the prize in full view. The danger was never really about raw strength. It was about attention. Whoever controlled the moment of detection controlled the outcome, every single time. So when you feel that prickle on your neck in an empty parking lot, or get the urge to turn around on an empty trail, or check the rearview mirror one extra time on a dark street for no reason you could explain to anyone, you are not being irrational. You are running software that is several 100,000 years old, tuned in an environment where the gap between noticing and not noticing was the gap between living and dying. Your modern brain calls it anxiety. Your ancestors' brain called it Tuesday. There's a strange modern footnote to all of this. Studies on human behavior have repeatedly found that people behave differently when they merely feel watched, even by a poster of eyes on a wall, even by a pair of dots that vaguely resemble a face stuck above an honesty box. People litter less, donate more, and cheat less when something resembling eyes is nearby, even when they know, consciously, that it isn't a real gaze at all. We don't fully outgrow the wiring that treats being seen as a meaningful event, because for nearly all of human history, it genuinely was. Being seen meant a predator had failed, or that a group member was watching your back, or that you were, for the moment, safe inside a circle of attention. Today, the stakes have changed almost completely. Nobody is calculating whether to drag you up a tree after dinner. But the machinery that once scanned the grass for a crouching shape is the exact same machinery that makes you glance over your shoulder on a quiet street, that makes a dark hallway feel different from a lit one, that makes you instinctively want to know who's behind you before you turn your back on a room. You don't need to outrun anything anymore. You just need to understand why some part of you still checks. Because the truth is older than fear and steadier than instinct. You feel it before you see it. And for nearly all of human history, that feeling was the whole point.